In Revelations chapter 21, Revelations 21 is like almost the end of the Bible. The Apostle John wrote this, and actually probably 50 years or 60 after, something like that, after his time with Jesus. And it was a time when he was caught up in heaven and got a vision from the Lord, and he's looking into the future when he writes this in chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain no more, for the former things have passed away. That was after the coming of Christ, after his ministry. About 700 years or so before the coming of Christ, before Christmas, prophet Isaiah, he spoke about the coming. And he said this in chapter 2. There's a number of messianic prophecies in Isaiah. Isaiah is a book that was written from sayings that were kept, that were recorded by Isaiah, and most of it's judgment. Most of it is the judgment words from God on a rebellious people. And it wasn't just Israel, it wasn't just Jerusalem, it wasn't just Judah. It was they plus nations around them. The book of Isaiah is just one judgment after another. But throughout the book, there are these prophecies of when Messiah is going to come. And there's a number of them. We're looking today at chapter 2, one of the earlier words of prophecy. And it starts saying this, chapter 2 in Isaiah, verse 1. The word that Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it, and many peoples shall come and say. Well, we're going to continue looking at that in a minute. But I guess, where Revelation talks about how this new Jerusalem is going to come down out of heaven, it's like a bride adorned for her husband. Here it talks about how there's the dwelling place of God is going to be on this mountain. It's going to be established. Nations shall flow to it. And he speaks about what shall be when Messiah comes, when Jesus comes. And he speaks about what will be said by those who come to that mountain. And he speaks in these short 5 verses of what shall be done by those who come to the mountain. And so the question that I have to ask today is, of Christians all around the world, but particularly us here, what mountain do you live on? Is it the highest of mountains? Because Isaiah says what's coming is going to be established as the highest of the mountains. Or are you living on a hill or in a valley? What mountain do you live on? Verse 2, I've already read it, I'm going to read it again. He says what's going to be. It shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be lifted up above the hills, and all the nations shall flow to it. The house of the Lord shall be established. This word for house in the Hebrew means a dwelling place. It means temple. It could be translated either way, but it's a dwelling place. It's That's why it's translated in many of the translations a house. It's because when we go home, where we live in houses. That's where we dwell. That's where we hang out. So when somebody goes over to this house and neighbor looks and he says, oh, they're going to their house. They're going home for the night. Or they're leaving their house. It's the place where they live. And this says that this will be established. The house of the Lord shall be established. This is where the Lord dwells, okay? And it is the highest of the mountains, above all the hills. And it says, all the nations shall flow to it. Word for nations, it's ethnicities. It can mean peoples who are politically organized. In other words, kind of like the United States, we have a number of different ethnicities. Or it could be a country that it grew from one ethnicity, and it's very clear it came from a clan of peoples. Because back in Isaiah's day, many of the people who were identified as a people were a people because they came from a certain lineage. They were all related. They were a clan. So they were like, people knew who their tribe was. Well, here it says, whether they are of ethnicities, whether they're of different they're organized politically, whether they're organized culturally or geographically or according to clan, it's all of those things. And keep that in mind, because this is going to get interesting here in a second. It says, all nations shall flow to the mountains, to the mountain. Many peoples. This word's a little different than nations. It means clans. It means family. It means tribe. It does not mean the politically or geographically organized people. It's much more ethnic. But he says, all nations shall flow to it. Many peoples shall come. A couple of things I just want to point out. What's going to be is that. Think about it. Sounds wonderful, right? It sounds like there's going to be this celebration of cultural diversity. All kinds of people, different kinds of people. The house of the Lord, a place where God dwells, but it's a place where these people gather together and they're a part of that household. They're not any longer identified by themselves, but they're identified by being a part of God's household. What that means is the brothers, the sisters in God's household, they don't have the same backgrounds. They don't have the same political ideologies because they're all coming from different places. They have two things in common, at least two things, but two things in common. They're coming from all kinds of darkness, different kinds of darkness. Do you know some of the judgments that fall throughout Isaiah on these people? It's because they all abandoned God and they all celebrated different kinds of darkness. And when God first took the people of Israel's chosen people into the land, he said, do not practice according to these other peoples because they're in a place of darkness. I want this to be a safe place for you. And what did they do? They got judged because that's what they did. These people that we're talking about in Isaiah chapter 2, they're coming from all kinds of darkness. Do you know what that means? It means they were broken, they were messed up, they're confused and lost, and they got a lot to learn. That's what it means. And it means they have a lot of differences that didn't work out living in the darkness. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So one of the things they have in common is that. Another thing they have in common is they're all flowing to it. Did you see what it says here? It says, and all the nations shall flow to it. Great translation in the English Standard Version of this Hebrew word. It's a great translation because it means to get in line. It means to follow the same route, but it's of the imagery of a river. And so I don't know if you've ever been For those of us who have been here, I don't think you guys have been here yet from Germany, but for those of us who have been here on July 4th, July 3rd, red, white, and boom, we should know what this means. Because at red, white, and boom, everybody, 700, someplace between 5 and 750,000 people come downtown. Incredible number of people to watch fireworks. When the fireworks are over, I love just sitting there and watching the flow. It's like this river of people that come down Broad Street. All of Broad Street turns into a one-way street that way. On the other side of town, all of Broad Street turns into a one-way street that way. And I'm pretty sure, though I haven't seen it, I got to get on my bike sometime and check it out. But I think High Street does the same thing, north and south. Does it? Does anybody know? All I know is what I see here. Broad Street is a one-way river of people. This is the imagery of this. I'm not making this up. All nations shall flow to this mountain. And it's established. It shall be established. It's established by the Lord. The word establish means to create or fix. Just like God created and fixed the mountains and put them in place, he establishes this mountain above all the hills. So at least two things in common. One is they're all coming from dark places. And the other is they're all flowing in the same direction to the dwelling of God with men that is on this mountain. They don't have a lot in common otherwise, except they're all coming from broken places. Have you been around people like that? Think about it in a non-Sunday morning sort of atmosphere. Not a pleasant place. Some of the worst places that I've been. Like prison. I don't like. It's a wonderful thing to visit people, but getting there and the people there, whether they're the people watching over, it's a rough place to be, guys. When people are coming from dark places, not pleasant. They're just not pleasant. So what shall be? That's what's going to be. The second thing is what's going to be said by those who come to the mountain. And it's interesting to me. What you don't see here is you don't see people saying, wow, this sucks. You just don't see it. What you see is something different. And many peoples shall come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways. Please understand that was a slip. This is really important that we read this right, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations. That's between the peoples, right? So here are all these people flowing, and there's differences, there's disagreements. He says, he shall judge between the nations. He shall decide disputes for many peoples. So whether you have this clan or this clan disagreeing over something, this person, that person, no, he shall judge among the nations. He shall decide the dispute for many. So what will be said by those who come to the mountain? I would like to ask you, it's a little easier asking this question today than it would have been 20 years ago. It's just so easy. I don't need to give illustrations. I would challenge you to go home and discipline yourself to do this yourself. What are you saying these days? It's so easy because it's all digital now. What do your texts say to this person, that person? What does your communication say on social media? What about the kinds of memes you share? The things that you communicate? Are you communicating the things? We're going to the mountain of the Lord. You should come along. We should get in line. We should jump in the flow of what God is doing. We want to go up to the mountain of the Lord. This is a good thing. Or are we? Is that what we're communicating? Just look at your own stuff. You and Jesus have a few moments together. And just look and see, is that what you communicate, or are you communicating and reflecting what everybody else is in social media coming out of the darkness? Well, this is bad, and that's bad, and I don't like this, and this really sucks. What is it that you're communicating? Because according to prophet Isaiah, there's going to come a day when people going to the mountain, they're going to the mountain of God. They're saying, yeah, we got to go after this because there's something good here. You should come along. Let's get in the flow of this. That he, look at verse 3, that he may teach us his ways. You look on Instagram, you look on social media, you don't find a whole lot of people saying, let's go learn from God. It's like, I've already made up my mind, and this is what I have to say, and this is what I have to say. And people gather around their own opinions instead of trying to learn. But what is God's opinion? What does he have to teach me today? What is his instruction for me? You see, the people going to his mountain, it's all about learning what Jesus has to speak to me today. What is his life today? What is coming through the mountain that's God's dwelling among men? What is he teaching me as I grow higher and higher into his presence? What does he have? Because we want others to come. We're not supposed to be, the church isn't supposed to be bodies and groups of people who just find stuff that they agree on and then promote that. That's just a social club. No, it's supposed to be a people that gather together because they want God to teach them. And not just so they learn a bunch of stuff that isn't practical, but it says that we may walk in his paths. Jesus has a way for us to walk in this. And again, the Hebrew word, if you get into it, which we can't spend a lot of time with, but again, it's in the flow of God's teaching. There's a lot of words here that reflect this thing of getting in the flow of him, getting in the flow of his teaching, getting in the flow, the way, our walk to the mountain. And so we want to get in the flow. Get in the flow of his path for us. For out of Zion shall go the law or the instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. It's a people who wants the word of the Lord. And it says, he shall judge between the nations and shall decide disputes for many people. So it's coming to a place of respecting his exclusive place of judgment and decision rendering, of conflict and dispute. So what are you saying in your text messages, in your emails, and your Instagram posts, and the things you share? Not to make you feel bad, but just say, so what is it? So what is it that you are communicating? Is your word? No, come. We have differences, but it's all good because as we pursue the Lord, he's going to give us eyes to see things we didn't understand before. Let's all walk together in the light of the Lord. So what are you saying these days? Does Jesus celebrate you as that faithful one who's all in gathering and being about this hunger to learn? You know, kind of like the little kid. Not all my kids are like this, but I had one of my kids who was always wanting to go with dad, always wanting to learn. I'll tell you what, if that doesn't make a dad get a big head and feel confidence. You know someday that bubble's going to burst because you're not Superman. But at the moment, it's great. Do you know God wants you to be that child that looks to him and says, but Daddy, Abba, Father, I want your love at work in my life. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to be like my Daddy, my Father in heaven. Just really given everything to walk like his dad. And so when Dad's walking like this, little kid is walking like this. And when he's walking like this, little kid's walking. You know the commercials, you see this a lot, right? What will be said by those who come to the mountain? Come, let's go to the house of the Lord. Gathering, invitation. That he might teach us all about learning from him. Not promoting our ideologies, but wanting to learn from him. So that we walk in his path. That's going to be what's said of people who are on their way to that mountain. And the last thing, and what would they do? What do you see them do? If they're really walking towards the mountain, and if their heart is saying these things, they're going to do things. Verse 4 says, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come let us walk in the light of the Lord. Are you listening to that? Do you hear that? Incredible thing. It says the people that Isaiah sees in the future doing this, they're the ones who they look to Jesus to be the judge and decider. And it says they beat their swords into plowshares. I just want you to stop and think about that. Do you know the word beat in the Hebrew here? It means to shatter or crush or press. Bottom line is this. When they're done with that weapon, and the sword back then was about 20 inches long. It was kind of halfway between the sword we think of in our minds because of what we know of the medieval times and a dagger or a knife. So it was more like a long dagger. It was about 20 inches long. But you know what? Their minds, their hearts, what they were given to do was to take instruments that were meant for killing, for destroying, and turn them into something else that you aren't even going to recognize them. I think if Isaiah were writing this today, I think it'd be really interesting to hear what he has to say, because we're talking about taking a weapon that was designed for destruction and turning it into something that's used for gardening. The plowshare was used to till the ground, was to loosen up hard dirt so that you could plant a seed and the seed would grow and become fruitful. And so the imagery here is to take things that were designed for conflict between nations and peoples and individuals, the stuff of fighting, and turn it into the stuff of gardening. Not making it up. It's not just the swords into plowshares, but he says the spears into pruning hooks. Do you know what a pruning hook is used for? A pruning hook was used to lop off a branch that was not really producing, but that was hurting the fruitfulness. And so what this is kind of like the person who says, God, I'm all in. I'm into the flow of what you're doing. So if I am in your way somehow, get your pruning hook out. I want to be cleansed. I want to be trimmed. I want to be that athlete. When you're an athlete in high school, in America anyway, and then you go to a serious program in university level, you get a lot more trim. You just do, because this is getting serious now. Yeah, I probably shouldn't use a personal illustration, but there was a day when I was extremely fit, guys. My heart rate was in the 30s, really. My resting heart rate was in the 30s. I was a distance running machine. I wasn't that great, but I was as great as my body was going to get. One of my kids went to university level. I didn't get permission to share, so I'm not going to say who. The coach looked at me and says, "When we're done with him, oh, he's gonna be cut." I can't say much more because it'll give it away. But you know what? That's what happened. The pruning of the dead weight, the turning into of what is important for agility, for effectiveness. So they turn the swords into plowshares and the spears into pruning hooks, which one is used to plant the seed, and one is used to make more fruitfulness. The bottom line is this thing of conflict and fighting, that is over. It's not of this nation of people. The people on this path are no longer lifting up swords. They're no against one another. They're no longer strategizing. Did you see this? Neither shall they learn war anymore. How much of people's minds today are consumed? All you got to do is watch the news, look at social media, check out Instagram. People are constantly strategizing how to overcome this group of people have this ideology or this group of people. How many people are actually strategizing how to become more productive for God's kingdom? How to become more loving, how to have that unconditional love we see of Jesus on the cross. What we see in Christmas of the coming of peace on earth, goodwill among mankind. How many people are strategizing or they're shutting out this learning of war? Whether the learning of war is this little tiff that's going on between this kid and it's all on social media, or whether it's a clan, or whether it's a people group, or whether it's nation against nation, the people that are in pursuit of God's mountain, they're not availing themselves of that kind of strategizing and that kind of learning. No, their strategy is not about that. He says, "O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord." The strategizing is, so how can we be reflections? How can we have Jesus' light in us? That same light that he talks about in Isaiah 9, we'll probably look at that in the coming weeks, where people in darkness see this great light that's coming with Emmanuel. They see that light with a people who are strategizing, being gardeners for God. Gardeners, this is what blows my mind. Gardeners on the battlefield. When people emigrate to one country to another, if they're farmers, they're looking for that lush farmland, right? When America, in history and some of our better moments, has gone to help people in third world countries and they have a problem with water, do you know what we do? We take our scientists, we take people who have learned how to irrigate and to turn the dry lands into plush lands for gardening. God has for his people in this world to be gardeners on the battlefield. Gardeners on the battlefield. The battles might be raging around you. Don't get caught up in the animosity. Don't get caught up in the hatred that takes over, and you end up drifting over into these places of, but that's not right, and that's not right, and that's not right. No. Jesus is the judge. He's the decider, and he calls us to be the light, and he calls us to be the gardener, and he calls us to take the swords and turn them into plowshares. He calls us to take the pruning hooks, make pruning hooks of the spears. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is this: how can I adapt this sword, this instrument that I've used pretty effectively in slaying this dragon and that dragon? How can I adapt that to till the ground, to plant seeds? How can I be about the pruning even of myself first and foremost, that there's greater fruitfulness? This is the strategy that we should be availing ourselves to. Come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. Father, I want to thank you for today. God, that we would receive and hear from you. Get in the flow. That river of people where it's all about you. Strategizing how you would have us to garden on the battlefield. Amazing prophecy that you showed Isaiah. He was just giving a prophecy of what you gave him. He was just sharing words that came from you. Your passion and your heart. That's what this is. That we would walk in it. We worship you, Father. In your name I pray, amen.